Okay, so over the past couple of days, we've been covering the pretty funny XQC CRASHOUT over VTubers. Now, this has been a pretty interesting topic as there's been many different sides to this one particular clip, obviously evident by the 17.3 million views this got and the 8.9 thousand likes, right? Again, this has been a very heavily talked about topic, and I thought this was a very interesting one because I saw a couple of takes that I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of the VTubers proving XQC wrong. If you don't know, obviously, yeah, XQC says on stream, let's be honest, most VTubers use VTubing as an excuse not to show themselves because they are disgusting. Which obviously a lot of people were not happy about. And then we had a huge influx of VTubers who essentially shared what they look like over on Twitter, right? And again, there is like so many of these people saying like, oh, my bad, I guess I'm, you know, a 40-year-old man or whatever, which, as you can see, is obviously not the case. We covered this post from Alphalia and also, you know, some other people as well saying I'm stinky, close to a 40-year-old man, saying VTubers are disgusting. So again, so many people kind of adding their own posts, including people like Saruei, obviously a very, very big VTuber as well, who does cosplaying. Now, one topic that I thought was pretty interesting was the whole concept of this being bait. So yeah, this is a post from Espiritu here responding to a post from Legal Mindset. Essentially, you know, this VTuber did the trend, showed their face alongside their VTuber model, and then Legal Mindset says privacy is the biggest advantage of VTubing in terms of preventing stalking incidents like Emeru. Now, if you don't know what happened with Emeru, obviously she ended up getting, you know, essayed at TwitchCon, which obviously was absolutely horrible to see, and that was a whole thing that happened, you know, a month or so ago. And again, yeah, obviously he is very right. You know, VTubing does prevent that kind of stuff because, again, you know, you might farm some people who might be weirdos, but, you know, at least they probably won't know what you look like and they will never know where you are, and you're not attending conventions in well, unless you do, but, you know, usually you don't attend conventions in person, so you have no kind of risk of something like Emeru happening because no one can really run up to you at a convention and try to hug you or kiss you or whatever, right? So again, I think that is essentially, you know, a massive positive to being a VTuber, right? But then obviously Espiritu responded to this by saying, I don't get why so many VTubers took the bait and doxed themselves to people who will call you ugly no matter how you look, unless they never saw themselves as VTubers and wanted to sell their looks to gain new viewers, which is fine, you do you, but it makes you look fake now, like you're trying to build a parasocial viewership. But obviously they say, yeah, here. So again, obviously, I think like in terms of this tweet here, I think that there was a kind of, I guess, level of bait that was going on. I don't think XQC was purposely doing it to bait the VTuber community into showing their faces. Maybe it was, to be fair, but again, obviously, you know, he's saying that they're disgusting. I don't know if he was saying that in mind of that this will get clipped on Twitter and thousands of VTubers will post their faces to this. Again, I'm not sure, but at the same time, obviously, I do find the kind of second part about doxing themselves to be pretty interesting, right? Because again, I don't know if I would consider, you know, someone going onto the internet and posting their face willingly like doxing, right? Obviously, they're saying doxing themselves. I would probably just class that more as like, you know, just showing their face off. Like, again, it's completely, you know, up to them. They have decided to do that, and that is what it is. But I guess you could say that they got baited so that then someone could go ahead and, you know, find out who they are from their face or whatever. Again, I could, you know, definitely understand that, right? And Legal Mindset as well says, agree, it's clear bait. VTubers should hide their face at a minimum for privacy, can show your body if they want. Said, as some have said, and I agree with them in part, I think some of these chicks wanted this bait as a way to show what they look like, as well as a way to sell the looks for more followers. So the VTuber stuff was all a grift for them, which, again, I do find kind of interesting because I know a lot of them are very, you know, dedicated VTubers, and some people, you know, do just show off their face. Obviously, you have a big kind of spectrum whenever it comes to VTubers in the space. Some that, you know, don't like to show their face at all. For example, like ironmouse, right? She doesn't show off anything to do with her at all whatsoever, and, you know, that's her choice to do so. And then also you have, you know, other people, for example, like Bao and I'm trying to think, Onigiri, people like that, who obviously show their face, show their, you know, body, show everything, but also do VTubing as well. I think obviously it is a big kind of mix in terms of how VTubers feel comfortable with showing themselves. And I do think it is entirely up to them what they want to do, right? And I don't think that it makes them any less of a VTuber if they do the occasional IRL stream. Now, obviously, if they're like, 95% IRL and 5% VTuber, then I can understand why people are saying, oh, they're using VTubing to kind of bring people over and bait them into it, right? That 100% is true, right? But I do think that if, you are keeping a really good balance and maybe even doing more of the VTubing side, I don't think there's really much of an issue for that. But again, a lot of the people as well who have posted in response to this have already shown their face, which I also think is another point in terms of, saying that they got baited into doxing themselves. A lot of the people that are posting and replying and responding have already shown their face or their body or whatever. Obviously, in the case of saruei, she doesn't show her actual face. She just shows, her cosplays and things that she does. So again, I don't think they've been necessarily baited here. It is just someone that obviously, isn't afraid to show themselves IRL, that is also a VTuber, kind of responding to it. And I think that is the majority of cases whenever it comes to quote tweets surrounding this, is people have already been comfortable with showing themselves. This isn't like this is their first time showing their face to the world. I feel like that is something that maybe some people are misunderstanding. I feel like, yes, there probably is some VTubers out there who have never shown their face off and saw this trend kind of going around and went, okay, I'll join in on this. And yeah, they have definitely fallen for the bait there. But I think for the majority of a lot of the people, including saruei, including obviously we saw with Alpha Leah as well, they have all shown off their faces and stuff before. And yeah, it's like they're not actually really revealing anything that we didn't really know before, right? So again, I don't think that, this is some huge, big like doxing scandal or whatever that is going on that is essentially trying to it was something like orchestrated by XQC for people to go ahead and like dox them and things over that. I don't think that's the case. I do think XQC was just trying to be just nasty, right? He was just trying to be nasty in the things that he was saying. I'm going to be honest, I don't think he really cares about Twitter and the fact that, well, he cares about Twitter, but he doesn't care about the fact that, there's going to be VTubers responding to this or whatever. I think that honestly, he's got other things that he wants to do than, stay around for that. Obviously, many people as well saying many of these people are barely VTubers. Many of those who showed their face have certain links in their bio, which, yeah, I can also see is true. Some people, saying that many of the people who have been responding have, mainly shown their face. And again, that is true. There are a lot of people within those quote retweets too that are essentially saying that, hey, I'm a VTuber when they have like a VTuber model that they've used once. That it can also be the case, right? But again, I think it is really just a super mixed bag to the point where I don't think there's really any definitive answer to this kind of original tweet, I guess, in terms of, the bait and the doxing, right? Because obviously, some people have shown their face before, some people haven't shown their faces, some people are barely VTubers, some people are fully VTubers. Again, it is such a mixed bag that I don't think this is like one of these scenarios where it's like, this is just the one thing that's happening. I think it can be explained by a lot of, different reasons and a lot of different kind of circumstances, I guess. People saying these same VTubers, some of whom are OnlyFans girls, did this last year and the year before, nothing new on that front. So it's easy why they did it. A very unhealthy dose of narcissism. It's an honest question. Do you think that people who do both VTubing and flesh tubing are somehow not VTubers? Case on one of the main people in the world that is the reason VTubing exists in the West does this, by the way. And yeah, I think this is a ongoing debate in the VTuber community. We saw this with the Hey I'm B situation as well. Obviously, her calling herself a VTuber when I'm pretty sure she was like set to debut at some point and wasn't like fully in the space and mainly does IRL content. People were saying that she wasn't a VTuber and kind of just using the name to gain viewers. And I can understand where people do actually feel pretty uncomfortable with that, because there's a lot of people, yeah, who have a VTuber model that is like cheap. They found it somewhere and then they'll just say, yep, I'm a VTuber now, and maybe like use it once for a stream and then the rest is all IRL. I can totally see why people are saying that they are not a VTuber. But I think for people who have been, kind of very active within the community and things, for example, like Kason, for example, like Bao, for example, like so many other VTubers who have shown their faces or have shown what they look like in real life, I think obviously that is just something that happens. I think that is just a part of the VTubing community, and I think it is, as I said, like more of a, I guess, spectrum of how comfortable people are with showing themselves in real life. It doesn't make you any less of a VTuber if you're still going live most times with a model, right? I think it is the people on Twitter who obviously don't use their models at all, who obviously don't stream as a VTuber very, very often at all, who obviously try to claim that they are a VTuber, who obviously try to, I guess, use it to then drive over people to their links and whatever, and obviously mainly show off their face. Again, as I said, it's a real mixed bag in these quote retweets, right? There's so many people, and again, I don't know anything about a lot of the people who have quote retweeted to this, because again, there are so many different VTubers, there are so many different people, and obviously, as I said, there are so many different kind of levels to this, right? There are some people who are very comfortable with showing their face and what they look like on Twitter, right? They're very comfortable with that, but they maybe not do it in a video or a stream. There's some people who will do it on a stream, and maybe they'll do more VTuber streams. But again, there are so many possibilities whenever it comes to VTubers. I think that a lot of people that are trying to, I guess, like overthink it a little bit, it does get to the point where it's just like, okay, like, what are we really doing here? I think that if they are majority VTubing over on their Twitch or whatever platform they use on YouTube or whatever, right? I think that, yes, they can be considered a VTuber. If they are not doing that, and they are, obviously mainly doing IRL content on their platforms, then, obviously, then you can start to have that conversation that maybe they are not a VTuber, and that's the case. But yeah, obviously, it's just created a very interesting topic surrounding all of this kind of stuff with the amount of people that are, talking about it. Again, I think that, it's valid, to feel like this was bait and everything, because it definitely does feel like some people were baited into showing their face. So again, I thought that was a very interesting topic to kind of discuss. And obviously, yeah, there's a lot of people who have been, discussing it as well in the comments, saying you're trying to build a parasocial viewership. I said that's always been their bread and butter. Have a theory about this, egging them to show pictures of their desk setup as a slippery slope to bait such financial gatekeeping used to weed out the competition, which again, obviously lots of people with their own theories and stuff about that. But again, at the end of the day, I think that, if they wanted to show their face in response to this, I think that's totally fine. I don't think you should be kind of shamed or whatever for doing so, or if you're like a VTuber or whatever. I don't think there's any problem with you showing your face on Twitter in response to this, even if it is bait or whatever. Again, maybe it was some bait to kind of, I guess, trick some people into producing some personal information, but I think, a lot of people were smart enough to know, not to share anything too personal, else it might obviously backfire. And if that's the case, well, that is their problem to kind of sort out. But again, I think that, yeah, it's interesting. Just kind of wanted to talk about it. And yeah, if you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Also, go to GameSubs, use my code Kaza, get 10% off. Again, they've got a ton of really cool stuff over there. Definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. That's all. See ya.